Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 2:07, and I call to order the meeting of the Orange County Sewer District Number 1 Advisory Committee. A copy of the agenda for this meeting may be found on the county website under the tab for the legislature. Please silence your phones and electronic devices. And at this time, I ask you all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kelly, could you do the roll call, please?
Amo?
Here.
Benelli?
Present.
Cheney?
Here.
Ellers?
Here.
Martell?
Here.
Tui?
Here.
6 present.
Okay, item number 1, we have Joe Mahoney, Senior Assistant County Attorney, Eric Denenga, Department of Public Works, Robert Gray, Deputy Commissioner, EF&S, and last but not least, Mary Beth Bianconi, Partner, Delaware Engineering, DPC. And you'll all join us. And before we start, I just wanted to say that after a number of years, we're finally entering a new chapter of the expansion and longevity project down in Harriman, the wastewater treatment plant. And we're now entering the design phase. And with that, Mary Beth, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, excellent. So I just have to bring you guys just a little takeaway, just so you have some paperwork to refer to. You're welcome.
And also, please let the record state that we have Gedalia Zegadin, administrator from Palm Tree. Thank you. Okay, Mary Beth.
So that I know what I put on here. All right, so as our chairman said, we have started a new phase of our project, which is a testament to all of the work of everyone in this room. That is the design phase. We executed the amendment to our agreement to begin that phase on August 30th. And the contract term, this takes us through design and bidding to get to construction contracts, but not through construction. So this contract term ends on April 30th, 2027. The scope of work for our project is the Harriman wastewater treatment plant to expand it from by 3 million gallons a day. So we're going from 6 to 9. And there's also upgrades being conducted at the plant to address longevity issues with existing systems. And just really quickly, I'll run through what we're doing. We're doing full design, so all of the different disciplines. We have a number of sub-consultants we'll be working with, including geotechnical, which is a really critical sub-consultant because we're going to build some very large tanks in close proximity to other very large tanks that exist. Site survey is very, very important, and utility locations on the site. When you go there, you see a lot of grass, but the reality is there are conduits and pipes underneath the ground that we need to know right where those are, as well as we'll be doing something called a pre-demolition survey, because we do have a number of structures that we will be taking down to relocate, replace, or just simply eliminate from the site. Our scope also includes securing regulatory approvals and permits. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We'll be doing cost estimating, as we'll talk in a few minutes, I think, about a construction manager that will be brought on by the county. We'll also be doing cost estimating, so you'll get multiple cost estimates, which is a good way to do this. We'll be reviewing the sewer rate and doing an impact analysis for the cost of the project to the users. We'll be supporting the county's law department in the County Law 5A proceeding that's required for this project. We'll be conducting grant writing and applications for financing. Talk a little bit more about that in a minute as well. We'll be supporting the bidding process. This project will obviously go through public bidding under the general municipal law and the county's bidding requirements. And then we'll also be supporting the award of those construction contracts with the various trades that will be required for this project And again, this is kind of a broad summary, but we'll be coordinating with the county's construction manager and the wastewater treatment plant operators. On that note, I do want to say that the operators are an incredibly important part of this project, and they will be involved as we go along so that we get input from them and we make sure that what we're designing really meets their needs. So in terms of additional update, you will remember we talked for some time about a requirement to do something called a TDS minimization plan. That is to try to reduce the amount of total dissolved solids that are entering the system that comes to the wastewater treatment plant to be treated. We submitted a revised TDS minimization plan to the DEC back on May 15th, and they issued a conditional approval on August 9th. To my knowledge, that is the only one of these in the state. So congratulations to everyone. That's good work. And we do, to address the conditions, we do have a revised plan that's due back to the DEC on October 9th. And on Thursday, we have a technical meeting Thursday morning to talk to Eric and Bob and staff regarding some amendments that we've made. So we'll certainly have that document back to the DEC by October 9th.
Mary Beth, before you go on, just one thing regarding the conditional approval that you said the state, it's the only one in the state. I think you mentioned in our meeting last week that this will, going forward, the DEC said will be almost like a template.
Yes.
Minimization plan. Can you just touch on that briefly?
Yeah, so we've spoken about this before. Total dissolved solids have been increasing in groundwater really across the country, and certainly here in the northeastern United States, and specifically in the Hudson Valley. And so the need to reduce the amount of total dissolved solids that are ending up in the environment is something that's really important from an overall regulatory scheme. So very much like how the state has a mercury minimization program, that they have all of the dischargers in the state work under a mercury minimization plan for which there's a template to be used to do that. And we do that here. We work with Bob and Eric and the staff to do that work as well. This TDS minimization plan will be a similar template. So it's good to be at the forefront. It's also a little hard. It's a lot of hard work to get there, but it's good to be at the forefront of these issues. So
Great, thank you. Yes,
Just to follow up on that, so what's the substance of the conditional approval? What are we going to be required to do other than prepare this plan? What are they expecting to see in this plan?
So the plan
is this, I know that
Yeah.
when we went into this, if we didn't get this, we were in deep doo-doo. So
No.
So, we're obviously not gonna be trucking it to the ocean.
No.
And so, I mean, what are any ideas to the cost implications, the technical implications?
So in terms of the conditional approval, the DEC's memo, they accepted the conditional approval. One of the things they asked us to do was identify hotspots. So if you're doing an environmental contamination project, where say there was a release to the environment of something that we all agree is not good for the environment, it's typical that you would go and you would say, okay, here's the 55-gallon drum that somebody buried in the backyard, and right there, X marks the spot. That's where where this source of contamination is. As we've said, TDS is a broad problem here. It's based on the geology of the area. In terms of the wastewater treatment plant, water gets drawn out of the ground. There's total dissolved solids in it. It passes through our homes and through our businesses, goes back into the collection system, and ends up at the wastewater treatment plant. So we've been challenged a little bit to say, they've asked us for a hotspot, and we've been challenged to say, well, it's the geology, right? Like that's a challenge. So we've had to kind of think a little differently about how to identify hotspots. And so what they asked us for was a threshold condition that would identify a hotspot. And we looked at, you guys will remember, we collected something like 400 data points of sampling broadly across the service area of the wastewater treatment plant in Orange County Sewer District number 1. And we used that data to say, okay, is there something that we could look at that's reasonably scientific to say, here's where we say maybe a certain geography is maybe contributing more TDS than others. And what we found, and this is not surprising at all, is that our much more highly urbanized areas, so areas where there's a lot of buildings, a lot of parking lots, a lot of roads and things, are contributing more total dissolved solids than other areas. That just makes sense. That's where it's coming from, right? So we did that, we identified that. And then other comments that they had were, yes.
What do they expect us to do when we find hotspots?
Yeah, we'll get to that in
Okay.
a sec, right? So they wanted us to rank the sources in order. We created a pie chart. They asked us for a pie chart. We made a nice pie chart for them. One of the issues we've had a lot of discussion about is water softeners. Folks do use water softeners here in the region because the water that comes out of the ground is hard. That's why it has total dissolved solids in it. So they've asked us, what can we do in terms of the use of water softeners, which then if you think about it are generally discharging a brine back into the sewer system. That's what a water softener is doing. So, what could we do? So we've included some information with respect to acknowledging the fact that the county sewer district is not a water provider. But we can certainly work with the water providers, and we did all that sampling. They were all very cooperative. So working with the water providers on things that the water providers could potentially do to reduce the hardness of water before it gets into the distribution system. So it's kind of in one point of control as opposed to in every house. So that's one thing. And then another thing they asked us for was to do a little bit more technical analysis of the potential impact of road salt on total dissolved solids in the environment. And this one we've struggled with quite a bit because it is extremely difficult to do groundwater sampling in an area where there's road salt application and then be able to say, this groundwater sample, which is 10 feet away from that road, that there's a causal relationship between the salt that was put on that road and this water sample. From a scientific perspective, that's really difficult to do. So what we said there was the county has some really strong, we talked about this before, some really strong practices to control the amount of road salt that's used by the county on county facilities. And the county's storage of road salt is, very robust in terms of controlling the release to the environment. So what we put there was that we would do some sampling at county facilities, do some upstream sampling. So what's the groundwater upstream of this road where salt is going to be applied? What is it downstream? Is there any relationship that we can see between those things? Same thing with salt storage. We're not convinced that we're going to see a lot in this just because this is an extremely challenging from a scientific perspective. But it's an important part of the programming. So the TDS minimization plan, what it includes. So we had to establish,
Tell me this. I understand the cause and effect making, but the secondary backup is always mind mapping correlations. Do they buy that? If you say, okay, we've looked at all these roads and all these things, and we find there's a 77.5% correlation. We know we can't prove it. We can't say it's cause and effect, but we tell you there's a relationship.
we did that.
Does that work?
We did that.
What did they say?
No.
Okay.
So that was where we started, right? We started with lane miles, right? We kind of
Okay.
did lane miles, we overlaid lane miles and, kind of over the top. We looked at the sampling because we did sample about 400 locations.
Yeah, that's, I'm thinking.
So we did some work there and it's just very, again, because the sources of TDS and chloride in the environment are, broad, right? There's no direct to the hotspot thing. There isn't some place where we can go say this is, where it came from. So the minimization plan, I won't spend too much more time on this, but we had to identify goals, what the legal authority is of the county to implement the plan. We looked at sources, including water supply, the actual wastewater treatment plant, because we use chemistry at the wastewater treatment plant that can contribute some degree of TDS, hauled waste, commercial industrial users, which are a very, very small proportion of this, and that we do have data to show. Household uses, which is a fair chunk, water softeners, which is a good proportion, road salt use. We just source summary, and then we ranked the sources. And again, not surprisingly, we see that our highly urbanized areas, so really our villages, are areas where there's going to be more contribution of TDS. And that's all of our villages, not any specific one, just because they're urbanized. We looked at a control strategy. In terms of controlling water treatment chemicals at the wastewater treatment plant, that we can do. We looked at our pretreatment and local limits in our sewer use law. We're already very stringent, and the county does a very good job at that. We looked at industrial pretreatment. We'll be identifying if there are any industrial dischargers who could control TDS at the source. Identification of commercial industrial contributors. We'll be looking at road salt, water softeners, and water supply, and then there's an education and outreach component. In terms of the cost of this, that's kind of one of, I think, our next steps. But one of the things that we tried to do with this plan, this is very much like mercury minimization, Eric's staff, as well as the folks at the wastewater treatment plant, are already doing a lot of these things. So we're really utilizing existing resources, existing sampling, existing things that we're doing to just do a deeper dive on evaluating this. Again, the goal here is to try to reduce the amount of TDS that's being introduced into the environment and into the treatment plant, with an ultimate goal someday of eliminating it. Given that so much of the contribution is the geology, groundwater, that's a challenge, but it's something that we've been tasked to do. So that's where we are with TDS minimization.
Just relative to the water softener question, and the source being a major contributing factor to why people would use water softener, salts. As there might be changes to the source, then how are we gonna wean people off of, if the source changes, the source is no longer high in
TDS, right.
TDS.
It's a public
How do you
education
get people
campaign.
to stop using the water softener?
Public education campaign. You know, it costs you money to have a water softener. You'll be saving money if you stop using it, right? So this gets right straight to an issue that most people are very close to. The other thing about water softeners is old school water softeners are timed. They're not super efficient, right? They don't recognize whether or not, like, what is the load of how much softening do I need to do? Newer ones do, and newer ones also discharge far less. So there's also there's kind of an intermediate step where perhaps water suppliers may either be changing sources or treating at the source, which would give you one point of control, which is much better than many. But also there's also upgrading water softeners and technology. And
So it might make sense at some point to look at rebates for someone who updates their water softener.
It's possible. We've actually discussed this as a group, and I think that we have to figure out where the source of funds would come from and what's legal to do with respect to a rebate for a water softener by a county sewer district. So that's a work in progress. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but we have discussed that.
I had some questions going back to the
I'm
first
sorry.
part. Do you want to wait until the end and we'll do that?
To what, item
Back-
one of
yeah.
this? Yeah, you know, Mary Beth, why don't you just go down and finish up Speedy's and then we'll cover
Okay.
that. And then Lori, do you have a quick question? No?
Yeah, I do. In regards to the water softener, can you look into see if there's been any partnerships with sewer districts and the manufacturers of water softeners who might offer rebates, or maybe
We can look into that. We did some looking into that because the water softeners are on the drinking water side. The wastewater is the waste,
Yeah.
really, this is the challenge. They're really not, it's a source issue, not really a wastewater issue.
Right, well, I get that, but I mean, because it's a source, it has become a wastewater issue in my
Yeah.
brain along those lines. And then you had started to say the cost of the project. I want to make sure we get that on
Yeah.
record today.
Right now, we haven't identified what the cost of conducting the TDS minimization plan is because it's just been approved conditionally, right? We have these last couple of things that we need to address. But again, we're trying to, just like we do with Mercury, we're trying not to add burden and not to add excessive cost, but to make this an effective program. So we're trying to minimize the cost, in consideration of the fact that you're doing a design for a treatment plant and you're going through this regulatory process and you're already spending a lot of money to address it that way. But that's something that we'll be talking about as we go down the road.
And
Very-
when we look at when you look at something for the water softeners and sources in general, can we mirror the program that was put out about the wipes, don't flush the wipes?
The public education is a big part of this,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's part of education and outreach is definitely part of this.
So I mean, you got a blueprint there kind of already with the wipe programs, maybe something along those lines.
Yeah. A lot of it is gonna be, we need, obviously, the sewer district can communicate with its customers,
Mhm.
but the water system customers are not always the same people as the sewer district customers. Right, so we have identified all the water systems, we know who the contacts are, we have all of these. So there's a lot of this is sort of a
A lot of moving
cooperative.
parts, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts.
Okay, Barry, before we do move forward, why don't you cover your,
Oh, okay. The contract that you signed, in August, how much and what were the terms relative to lump sum versus cost not to exceed?
So the contract is an amendment to our prior contract, which was originally executed on June 9th of 2015.
Attachment C.
I'm sorry?
Attachment C.
Yes, so. Have them tabbed, so it's in here somewhere, there's B, there's C. So the basic services of engineering, which are design, development, and construction documents, bidding and negotiation phase is $2,794,420. The way this project is structured, there are a number of sub-consultants that will be part of our project. Pre-demolition, hazardous building material survey, we budgeted $35,000 for. All of these are gonna go to solicitations. Laboratory testing, $15,000. Topographic and boundary surveys, $100,000. Geotechnical analysis and investigation, $120,000. And utility locate services, $60,000. We're gonna bundle some of these for efficiency purposes. We do get, we do charge a 10% sub-consultant management fee on top of those so that we can deal with contracting and all the other issues. And then the additional services, the engineer, and this is the structure of our original agreement. Our work with the county to apply for financing and grants to, somebody was asking earlier about the EFC. So that work is $35,520. Minority women-owned business enterprise compliance for this phase of the work is $13,600. Co-funding opportunities and co-funding application technical assistance, so that would be other funding opportunities is $22,880, and user rate impact assessment and implementation support is $74,800.
So what's the grand total?
Approximately 2.9. 2.9 plus.
Something, yeah.
Okay, so.
You just,
Slightly over.
Because there were two items that were over 100,000, they're right around.
Yeah,
100,000.
the first one was 300,000.
But those were outside, those were those are other items included that we're paying other contractors for.
Yeah.
That's what there's,
What are we
To
paying?
Delaware.
We're paying them
Yeah.
direct.
just the Delaware.
Right.
We're paying them through Delaware.
Yeah, you pay
Exactly,
them through us, but they go to others.
Yeah, you incorporate them, I think you're looking, it's 3.2, 3.3 now.
Right.
And that's off the top of my head.
And I believe you guys, we responded to an RFP for this, and we were the lowest price.
Yep.
As far as I think.
By a lot.
Which is sometimes difficult to do, given you know a lot more than competition does usually. A lot of times the competition will, not knowing,
Right.
assume lower.
Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned MWBE. So we're still going through the grant writing process. We have no grants.
Not yet.
Does that mean, you talked about compliance, was that for this phase? And is that,
So
is
that's,
the expectation that we're going to be, the grant would apply to this phase
No.
as well?
there's no
Or we-
recapture on this. So
So
that's
everything
for-
we're doing now, we're getting no grant monies for.
Right, because you have to, so this is one of the questions we're gonna come upon here in a minute is making an application for Environmental Facilities Corporation, for the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, for all these other grant programs. you have to go through the county law process to establish the project cost, to establish the impact on users before you can apply for those things. You can apply, you're just not gonna be eligible because you have to do that process first. So this is one of those, getting all the carts and the horses. You could have waited, but you would be waiting probably 18 months to start design if you wanted to do that recapture process. So, because you have to,
But we could have gone with a preliminary engineering report 18 months ago and gotten to a point where design might have been funded, correct?
so at every aspect, we've talked about that, and it's the time versus the, do you want to do the MWBE? Remember, this design is going to be a few % of the cost of this project. It's not, and to do the MWBE does add cost to the project. So MWBE in here is for coordinating for the construction contracts. Because we have to embed, when we put the project construction, for that to be recapturable, we have to embed all of the requirements, American Iron and Steel, Service Disabled Veterans, Minority Women Owned Business, BABA, something called BABA, which is Buy America, Build America. They keep coming up with new acronyms for things.
Construction manager, when do we expect that to be, boots on the ground, under contract, able then to support the efforts during design, especially, I would think, related to cost estimating, Mary Beth?
Yeah, that's the biggest role for them at this point.
Where are we on that
It's
process?
just going to bid it.
Very bad.
Yeah, they drafted an RFP, they're
Chart
gonna
out.
get it, try to get it.
I just try to summarize it on here.
I mean,
You drafted it,
Yes.
Yeah, Bob and his staff drafted it.
and then it has to go to where, besides law?
It's forwarded to DGS.
Yes.
General Services.
The General Services will put it out.
Yeah.
To bid that.
And there's also the lower mains, the design of the increase, that's another RFP we're preparing.
For a construction manager for
No,
that?
no,
For
design.
for the
Design.
collection
For
system.
design.
The construction manager will be supervising both
Okay,
the plant and the lower mains.
Which is so good.
All right, Michael.
Just quick,
Yeah.
we've dealt into the contract number one. The cost and sewer rate impact analysis. Do you have a date that we'll be looking at having something like that to look at?
So I did have a schedule. I didn't bring you guys the full schedule because it's a bullet schedule, but we're gonna put it into an actual like date schedule.
Mary Beth, do you address that on the back anywhere?
No, I didn't talk about that specifically. That is one of the first things that we do. We have to do, we do a preliminary cost estimate early on, just so that we have something to start with. So we're looking at that user rate impact is in month 8 and month 9. We're in month 2 right now. So it's coming up. It'll be like in the next 6 months. It needs to be done early on in the process.
Mary Beth, would you be able to send a copy of that? to-
Yeah,
to
like I
Kelly,
say-
And she could send it to all the,
This is the schedule that's in the contract, and it just has month 1, month 2. We're converting this into an actual date schedule.
oh,
That's why I didn't bring it,
Okay.
because we want to give you, but I put the dates that we know in here, in this memo that I'm giving you, which are the sort of interim, the first out of the gate dates.
Okay. That's good, it's again, I would hope, and probably hope, not hope is not a good plan, hope that it's less than 6 months and we get closer to that. That'd be really nice.
It's a function of cost estimating, so we have to get enough design work done to a reasonable cost estimate to then go do the impact analysis, right? So it's like if we just want to pull a number out of the sky, we can do it right now, but it's not going to be that valid, right? We need to line up the cars on the train tracks, right? So we got to have a cost estimate. It won't be it'll be the first kind of cost estimate that's done in the context of design, and that's it'll be our biggest one. This is a funnel process. Start with the biggest number and work your way to a smaller one. but that's what we'll do, use to do that analysis.
Okay, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, so Mary Beth, if you want to go back and pick up at Speedy's permit item number 3,
Sure.
and then we'll hold all other questions to the end.
Yeah, because some of the stuff is covered in the later parts of this memo. So, Speedy's permit, the permit that was issued in March 1st of 2020 is a 5-year permit, so it will be up on March 1st of 2025. So the county received an application for renewal of the permit that the county prepared and sent back in on August 6th of 2024. That submission was deemed timely and sufficient on September 16th. And the current permit will remain in effect under something called SAPA, which is the State Administrative Procedures Act. And then our memo that we received from the DEC does say that they will be conducting a full technical review at some point in the future based on something called the Environmental Benefits Points Program. But we also recognize that we'll be submitting a permit application for the 9 MGD expansion of the plant that will probably make that full technical review of this permit unnecessary. And that kind of gets us into what's our schedule coming up. And again, I kind of gave up, this is a broad schedule, but right out of the gate, the most important thing that we can do, other than get our subs on board and get that information in hand, is get our permit applications prepared. So we will have permit application for a new discharge permit for a 9 million gallon a day plant. We'll have a variance application that will go along with it. We will need a joint permit from the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC because we'll be doing work at the outfall, which will be near the bed and banks of the Ramapo River, and that requires a permit. We're doing the wetlands survey for that right now. We will need a Speedy's general permit for construction stormwater discharge. We're definitely going to disturb more than an acre of land. And we also will need to submit something called a notice of anticipated noncompliance. And that is for when we get to construction, there's a potential because we will be taking tanks offline and doing different things that we may have some noncompliance with the permit. DEC used to issue interim permit limits for those circumstances. They do not do that anymore. Now they ask for something called a notice of anticipated noncompliance. Our schedule has us getting all of these permitting packages together and submitting them in February of 2025, which is actually very aggressive. It's a very aggressive schedule. The reason we're doing all of these all at once is because these are all permits for DEC under something called the Uniform Procedures Act. And what that says is that if you need any permit from DEC, if you need 5, you have to submit them all at once. And the logic is that DEC doesn't want to issue a permit on a project for one thing and then 6 months later have you apply for something else and they go, oh, wait a minute, if we knew this was happening, we would have issued that first permit differently. So that puts us in a situation of having to get a lot of permitting information together very quickly. I'm just going to say this really clearly. I said this the other day in our meeting, and Peter, you were there. We will get notices that these permit applications are incomplete. We are not expecting these permit applications to be complete, and we are not expecting the DEC to act on them immediately. But it is the way to engage with them in a review process. And so we need to get them in permit applications so that we can work with them through the design. So again, just so you know, when in next year in the spring, when we get notices that say these are incomplete, we're telling you right now, we know they're going to be incomplete and that's okay. It's part of the plan.
Is that kind of their MO, kind of whittling it down?
Yes, exactly. You're kind of addressing large issues first and then getting to smaller ones. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to spend, you'll see the next one is the design schedule is 24 months from the start to submitting for a regulatory approval. Permits are one thing, a regulatory approval is a different thing. So get the permits all in line and then we submit for permission to go out to bid. What we don't want to do is wait and do all of that design work and then submit permit applications and then have them say, well, what about this? What about that? And what about that? Just adds time and makes for redesign. So that's why we get out of the gate really quick early on, get permits in so that we can engage with, and you're going to see there's going to be some meetings that we're going to be having with them with DEC so that we can advance along in a good fashion. So our design schedule is 24 months from our start. So that means that we'll be submitting for DEC regulatory approval to go out to bid no later than August 30th of 2026, hoping to beat that. But that is our current schedule. We anticipate bidding then in February of 2027. Contract award in April of 2027, and again, there'll be multiple contracts, and then construction start in May of 2027. So that's kind of there's a whole bunch of other milestones, but that's kind of those are the big ones. In terms of meetings, Peter attended our very first project review meeting of our technical working group last week. We're going to meet once monthly. It's going to be a hybrid meeting, so some folks will be in person, some will be virtual. Meeting the third Wednesday of the month between 9 and 10 a.m. This is a technical working group that's made up of DPW, EF&S staff, and operations staff, and our staff as necessary. So sometimes our structural folks might be there, our electrical folks, but the core group will always be there. And that is it's a meeting to review schedule, it's a meeting to review milestones, it's sort of more of an administrative like touch base. Are we all moving along on the right track? Does anyone have questions, other issues, other obstacles? Those kinds of things. So that's kind of our schedule focused. And once we have a CM on board, they will be an important part of that meeting to continue that process. Then separately, we'll be having what we call design workshop meetings. So those will be with the disciplines, and those will be on site at the wastewater treatment plant. So those will be the ones where like the electrical engineers all go and walk through the plant together and do their work in that way with the operations staff. So those are very technical meetings. All the meetings will have agendas. All the meetings will have follow-ups that come out afterwards to document what's discussed in the meeting, so we all stay on track. And then agency meetings. So right now we have kind of two that we've identified. There probably will be more as we go down the road. But out of the gate with DEC and folks, the technical folks here will know, we sent an email today seeking to establish a working group with DEC for quarterly virtual meetings with them. We've done this on other large design projects and it works extremely well. To get a group of permitting regulatory people at DEC together, they will bring in, say we need someone from fisheries, they will bring someone from fisheries to one of these meetings to tell us what they need. If there's other issues, they will, you know, we might need somebody from their chemical bulk storage group who will come to a meeting and discuss a specific topic. It's very effective. It's a very good way to stay on track. And in addition to that, we're looking to establish what we're calling a pre-application meeting before all of that list of permits that I mentioned in October. The DEC staff we identified for that are all folks who are familiar with this project, are familiar with the plant and its permit. So, and at pretty high levels in DEC, so they're people who can really contribute to the conversation, which is good. And then something called EFC, which is the Environmental Facilities Corporation. They're a funding agency here in the state. And Eric and I already attend a quarterly virtual meeting with them. The project is listed for financing. But as I mentioned, we need to get some design work done. We need to get a cost estimate. We have to go through the county Lot 5A process. The objective is to get all of that done so that next summer we're making permit applications. We're making financing applications. So financing grants targeting 2025 cycle. It's annual, so you get it done, you know, whenever you get it done in that time frame. But there's a drop dead deadline in the summer of next year. So immediate next steps, we're focused on getting our sub-consultants on board. We really need the survey and utility locate done very, very early in the process. We're doing some spot survey work right now, just so that we're not waiting to get a surveyor on board. The geotechnical work and the geotechnical design is another critical part of this. And then could lag a little bit is the pre-demolition survey work for the Headworks building specifically. And so those are kind of our big three that we need to get moving. We've been working with technical staff and with legal to get that process going. We've asked for that DEC pre-application meeting, which we're hoping to have happen in October. And we're gonna, again, be jumping into permit applications. And I'll say it one more time, they will be incomplete. So nobody come back and say, why is this incomplete? We know they're gonna be incomplete. County's soliciting for a construction manager.
Yes.
And the last one is, given all of this and where we are, we recommend that the cadence for these meetings, obviously it's your meeting, but given that there'll be some time when we'll have our heads down, The next time to meet, maybe logically, maybe the next quarter in January, because should have, because we're planning to submit our applications in February, so we should really have a lot to report on at that point.
Could I just suggest relative to the construction manager that communication be brought to physical services more sooner than the progress on that soon? Are we ready to go back to other questions? Thank you. I guess one of the things you rattled through all the numbers for the design contract. What's the base? How's that going to be billed? Is it a lump sum? Is it going to be
It's time and materials.
time and materials?
Not to exceed.
And not time and materials not to exceed.
And it'll be detailed billing, so it'll say, Brock worked for 6 hours,
Yeah.
here's what he did, here's his billing rate, here's the total, and they'll track all of the costs, all the sub costs will come as separate invoices, so there'll be full visibility on that.
The 10% fee on the subs, what are we getting for when we pay that fee?
That is that's because we have to manage them, so we have to do all their invoicing, so it's really our administrative costs. So, and it's typical, we're 10%, we're lower than most are 15 or 20%, so.
Yeah, Mary Beth, I certainly understand, you're number 5 on the next step, January being the next time, which you're the expert, you know what needs to be done and how much time you have. I would like to just modify a little bit and talk to the chairman of it, is we leave it open so that if anybody on the committee wants to have some input during each month, it's up to the chairman to say we can do it, and I checked the council on it. This could be a virtual meeting. It doesn't have to be in person, so if Peter says, well, we're getting some kind of questions about this, can we just catch 10 minutes to get an answer to this? Just so we're not waiting to something don't. Maybe we may not see it till January, but I'm thinking, let's keep that door open, that every month we have to run.
Definitely keep the door open. If
That's all.
anybody has anything in the meantime, let me know and we can set something up with the group.
Totally your call, because you'll understand, but just
Yeah.
raise the question.
The questions can go through Peter as well.
I was gonna say,
We
he's
can-
gonna be attending the.
We're communicating
Yeah,
and all
yeah, anyway.
meetings and.
He can just call us together as a Zoom and say, we updated.
Yeah, we can
So that's fine, I just want to make
relay
sure.
them right through him and we'll.
Yeah, I think right now, that this is a crucial stage for them to really get up and start flying with
No
this. So there's a lot of groundwork to do. So if anything comes up, I think that, I don't know, Kelly, do you know what the third Tuesday in January would be, or not yet? We don't know. So anyway, we got plenty of time for that. We got 90 days to figure it out. But in the meantime, if anybody has any issues, and I'm gonna be jumping on virtually with with those monthly calls. So, absolutely, Michael, anything that comes up, please.
Don't anticipate anything. Just leave it open.
January 21st, Pete.
January 21st. So that's just an outside date, but if need be, it'll be before.
Small question for Barry. How about the engineering for the lower mains? You want to see that RFP as well?
I think it'd be good to report on that
Yeah.
sooner than
Yeah.
waiting until
Yeah, we'll work on
January.
both
I,
those
you know,
right
we
now.
wanna.
Yeah.
I wanna make sure that everything moves forward,
Okay.
at a
So
pace
we'll-
that's consistent with what we're expecting
Yep.
Delaware Engineering to do.
Well, I think it's also, it serves an advantage to all legislators that this is a process that's obviously moving forward, and many people aren't really aware of the progress that we've made thus far. We had the public hearing, so they were aware of that, so it keeps people fresh in their minds as well. So I think it serves that purpose.
Do you think it would serve the other legislators if Mary Beth came in physical? Just to give an update and then.
Yes, but let's wait until after the first of the year.
Okay.
I think, you know, we've got October,
Budgets.
we're very busy with budgets.
I think what you want to be able to do with the idea of the manager and stuff like that would suffice to keep it fresh in people's minds.
Yeah.
And you'll definitely, Mary Beth will definitely have more to report in January,
Yeah.
or February,
Right.
physical.
Right.
Okay.
We just got started. We just had our first meeting.
Some meat on
Last
the bone.
week.
One more to talk about.
Okay,
First month, third week.
does anybody have any other comments or questions? No? Katie? No?
No, just that this is,
All right,
as you said, this
Well-
is the next chapter and it's very exciting.
yeah, this is great. We're
Keep going.
I think we're kind of over the first 5 years or 6 years, and now we're kind of see some actual daylight in 2 years, two.
It'll get brighter. It'll
The
get brighter.
goals are less ambiguous.
All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, great. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you all very much.
You said we're in the second one?
Peter.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page, 'cause